there.
Hello, Derek. Are you with me?
We are here. Sharon is here as well.
I'm here too. How are you, Daniel?
Hi, Sharon and Derek. Well, great to have you guys back. I'll tell you what, I'm doing so well that scientists want to clone me to fill the earth with happy people.
Well, we'll see if we can do that. Next time we get together, I'll get a little swab out of your cheek.
Well, hey, by the way, Sharon, you were under orders at a request at the Branson Conference. Did you ever get Derek's DNA tested? Because I had my suspicions.
I really need to. I do, because, look at those pointy ears. Let's face it.
Yeah.
I think he's part Vulcan.
Well, anybody, Derek, anybody like yourself who can rattle so many facts off without looking at a paper. I thought you were a cyborg, man. I said, where is it in your eyelids? Where is this stuff coming from? Because you weren't reading from a script, man, and it was just coming out, and it was amazing information.
He's got a little stack in the back of his neck.
You're very kind. No, it's just practice. Did it often enough. I'm just thankful that the secular broadcasting experience actually gets put to some good use.
Secular. So you were secular. Why don't we just start there, Derek? What were you doing in secular radio?
Well, when my normal friends and I were, 10 years old, and they were listening to the late night AM top 40 disc jockeys in Chicago, like John Records Landecker, I was listening to the late night talk show hosts like Dr. Milton Rosenberg and Chicago Eddie Schwartz. Those were my heroes, and that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I don't know why. It just, God wired my brain in a certain way. This is always what I've wanted to do, and now I are one. So. But when you come out of college, you're 19, 20, 21 years old. Nobody needs a 21-year-old talk show host because you're young and you're stupid and you don't know anything. So
you don't know what to talk about.
Exactly. So I wound up in top 40 radio for a number of years until I realized it was a lousy way to try to raise a family, and got out of it. But in 2006, God bless her, after we started PID Radio, our podcast, Sharon supported me as I actually used clips from the podcast to submit demo tapes to talk radio stations that were looking for somebody, and lo and behold, got hired in Columbia, Missouri, spent 18 months there on the air hosting an afternoon talk show, and program director of the talk radio station. Proud to say that our FM talk station beat the AM talk station for our target demographics, and they had Rush Limbaugh, so we did something right. But realized once again why I'd left radio the first time. Long hours, no pay, and lousy job security. So, but praise God, it was good training for doing what we do now. And it did offer the opportunity to bring some people like Tom Horn, Russ Dizdar, author David W. Lowe, the late Patrick Heron, to a secular audience. So, we had the opportunity to do some things. I'm not saying that that's why they kindly invited me to, focus on the website and get off the air, but that might have had something to do. But family reasons. Sharon's mother was ailing, and so we decided to
head on back to Indiana.
Head back to Indiana, yes, the Hoosier State. So we went there, and I went back into sales for a while. But that like I said, that training is being put to use now at Skywatch TV.
Well, I'm a bit partial to the Hoosier State. People don't seem to understand how a cowboy can come out of a Hoosier State. It doesn't seem like they work. But I traced my my sort of history. I think, where do I get this? Because I wanted to have a show, and it's a bit of a story that I back in 2014, no, it was 2004 actually. It's 2004. I went to a Christian radio station, and I told them, they didn't have a website, and I said, hey, I'll build you a website if you give me 2 hours on Saturday night. I said, but this show is not going to be like the other Christian programming that's on here. And the guy said, yeah. And I thought, what? Really? Okay. And so I did. That's where I started the show back in 2004, right after Art Bell went off the air. But I went back. I want to know, where did I get this? I don't want to say talent, because somebody said, you ain't got no talent, son. So it's okay. I don't have none. But whatever it is I do, I traced it back to an English class in 8th grade where they would let you write a story. And I have a tendency to write a story, and it'd usually be a sarcastic story, and it'd be about a teacher or a student, and everybody crack up, and then the teacher would throw me out in the hallway every time. I think, why does he let me read these things? And he kicks me out. And then later, I was in high school. That teacher called me up, and I thought that was weird. Why you calling me up in high school? And he said, "I want you to come down to this grade school." And I came back down. He goes, Daniel, he said, I never should have threw you in the hallway. He said, I tried to get you to say what I wanted you to say, and you never did. And he said, I let the kids say whatever they want to say, and then they produced a whole lot more. But I guess I got sarcastic edge I have comes from that. But Sharon, what about you? You got my story, you got of course Derek's story. What about your story? Where'd you come from on this?
If you go back to the age of the dinosaurs, I think I was born somewhere in there. And as I grew up with my dinosaur brothers and sisters, no, actually, I'm from Southern Indiana, little Hoosier gal, and I think I'm doing what I do because from the time my earliest days, I remember talking to the Lord, but I also remember writing and making up stories. So becoming an author, a storyteller, is just a natural thing for me. The Lord took me in a lot of directions that helped, as with Derek, helped to train me for what I'm doing now at Skywatch TV. He took me into theater. I sang opera for a while. I sang with a cover band in Indianapolis. I sang rock and roll and Chaka Khan and all sorts of odd things. And I sang country for a little while. I've done about everything when it comes to performing on stage. And I'm naturally an introvert. When I got my degree at Indiana University, one of the first things you do in your early classes, the one-on-one classes, is you have to take that stupid, personality test, because that's how they decide which groups you're going to go into when you break up and you have to work out a problem. I hate doing that, by the way. And I discovered I was an introvert and, judgmental and whatever. There are four areas. Well, I am an introvert in that I process information internally. I do not have to speak it in order to figure out what it is I think.
Unlike me.
I spend time and I'm very quiet, and that's how I make up my mind about things. And that, I think, as a writer, that's a natural thing for me. So I have taken all of those things because the Lord wired me to be, despite my introvert personality, to be someone who can be on, so to speak, to be on stage and be comfortable talking to others. All of that stage training helped with that. I am able to discuss just about any topic because I have this natural curiosity about the world. I have, anytime I had to take tests, get into graduate school and other, placement exams, I would always test equally left and right brain. So I love the arts, but I also love the sciences, and I also love history and politics and all of those things. So somewhere along, and even the Three Stooges.
Yes.
Which is how Derek and I met in the first place. We bonded over the Three Stooges on the internet. Wow. So here we are. The Lord brought us together for his reasons over the Three Stooges.
Okay. I think that is legendary.
That's the whirlwind explanation of why we do what we do.
Well, that is awesome, man. You guys have such a following out there, and people follow you for years, all the way back to PID Radio, and
they're trying to get us to pay them back. That's why they keep following us. Give us that money, you
That's right.
Well, you guys have been very prolific writers and presenters, and you've attended conferences and have upcoming conferences to attend as well. And I was thoroughly impressed by you guys, as well as Susan, my darling wife, who at the Branson conference. And she's sitting right here by my side. She's right off screen. But, we had such a great time. And I'll tell you what, man, we found this little restaurant in Branson. We've gone back forever. What's that called? Billy Bob's?
Billy Bob's Dairyland.
If you ever get there, go back there again. Go to Billy Bob's Dairyland.
Billy Bob's Dairyland. Okay.
Sounds crazy, but you go back. It's like a 50s place, man. Really, really cool.
All right, yeah. I've seen the website for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they got that kind of plastic tablecloth, and they got a jukebox in there. It's really, really fun. But anyway, so it was very good. But so let's get back to you, Sharon. Now, you started something called the Redwing Saga, as you can see if you're watching. Are you guys watching?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have the title right there. What's the genesis of that? What, Sharon, you wanted to do that. And by the way, I like it because, you present an alternative history, and you do it with science and various things, and you're telling the story in a different way. But what gave you that concept to develop that series?
It was sort of grew organically over the last 20 years or so, when I was at IU, Indiana University, as I said, I've been writing since I was a kid, and I've loved Sherlock Holmes since I was probably 10 years or so old, and I wanted to write something that was in the 19th century. So I wrote some short stories and even a couple of novels that were based around an alternative version of Sherlock Holmes stories. That caused me to have to research a lot about the 19th century, and I discovered that beginning in the early 19th century, and even going back to the very late 18th century, that a lot of things happened that led to where we are now prophetically. And so as time went along, and I've talked to Derek about this a number of times since we've been married, saying, boy, I'd really love to revisit those home stories, but recast them and rework them, reshape them a little bit, and make them a vehicle for teaching about Christ. And I guess it was about 2 years ago, 3 years ago? It was I think it was late 2015 that I decided, okay, I'm going to revisit that story. And as I read through what I had written back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Lord just kind of spoke to me, and He said, okay, I want you to teach spiritual warfare, and I want you to start with something that everybody practically around the world is familiar with, and that's Jack the Ripper. So that's how the Redwing Saga began, and since then I'm now finishing up book 5, and I've taken my characters through a lot of trouble, but as crazy as some of their situations are, it's not nearly as crazy as real life is sometimes.
So from the one of the things I like about them is we're always looking for a series on Netflix, and say, okay, this is going to be a good series, and it starts out, you don't really know you start watching it, but it's good that you developed a series where somebody can take it from the very first one, which is the Blood Lies, it looks like, in 2016, and then at the very end, then do you go automatically into 2?
Well, it's kind of hard to describe. Some of the books have a cliffhanger ending. Some of them appear to just sort of hint that there's more to come. The total number of books when the series is finally finished, I have no idea what it will be, because the main characters are still in 1888, and I plan to end it in 1948. So there's a ways to go.
All right. So their latest book, Realms of Stone.
Realms of Stone.
Now, of course, we don't want to give away the plot there, but what's a couple takeaways we're going to be getting into in that book?
Well, the first 3 books all have the word blood in them, so all of every book in the series will be part of a trilogy. So you've got 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 all the way down the line, and the second trilogy, they all have realms in the titles. Realms of Fire is book 5 coming up. Realms of the Dead is book 6. The next trilogy will all have names that relate to chess moves. So in Realms of Stone, I open it in a way that really was a delight, and Derek enjoyed it. He's so good to read all the books, but it was sort of a departure into almost a fantasy realm. So it opens up it's actually called the Realms of Stone. That's the title. It's called there's this maze, and I use mazes and labyrinths a lot through the series because those are actually part of pagan worship. And in fact, on top of Mount Hermon, there's something that is a very simple one, but it's forcing you to go in directions to find the goal. And that's something that Sir Charles Warren, who discovered the Stone of Hermon that we talk about in the book. He was also the commissioner of police for the Metropolitan Police Department. He was head of the investigation into Jack the Ripper. He is the one who found this stone on Mount Hermon. So by echoing back to that in Realms of Stone, I imply that there is something more to stones themselves than we as humans can understand.
Well, there is a lot of things about stones in the Bible. The one that always comes to my mind instantly is, that God will make the stones cry out. But there are, there's stone pillars and there's the cornerstone, I actually, when I look at stones myself, I kind of look at them with a little bit of reference because I always think, where was it? Why is it here? Where did it come from? It's something. Now, there's some people, of course, that say that stones have some stones have a magical characteristic to them. Have you researched any of that? Is that all myth, or is there something to that?
No, I think there may be something scientific to it. If some of the crystals that we see, we're using those now actually in radios and in computers. I mean, essentially silicon is another type of stone, you might say. I think that as science progresses, we're going to find out that you can simplify what we now call a computer, a means to store to store information, and actually do it within a matrix that is more like a stone. We definitely are already storing information on DNA, so you can store it in a biological mechanism. So why not store it in a stone mechanism, something that is entirely different than we? I think it's very possible that before Noah's flood, that some of the technology that the Watchers brought down to humans actually was very close to what we even today would call magic. Mm-hmm. They might have traveled in ways that allowed them to move almost instantly or very quickly from point to point without the need for a vehicle or a horse, or it may have been more like teleportation. They may have been able to calculate things and store information the way we do in computers today. They may have something that was sort of like a tablet, but it would have looked like a stone to us. In the realms of stone, I have these stones that are called seeing stones, and they essentially display information, and it will read your thoughts. It's sort of like Alexa in a stone.
Do you have any of these stones at your house, Sharon?
Not yet. I'm working on that. I'll see if I can get Sam T. Doxson, who is quite the engineer, to continue gathering all the raw materials, and then we'll see if we can put it together in our lab.
And the armadillos out back, which are digging up plenty of those stones.
They're bringing those. Yeah. Actually, we live in Stone County, which I got to tell you is called that for a reason. Yeah. We're on top of a ridge, and it's like living on one gigantic rock.
Azur has this question for you, Sharon, from the YouTube chat. Have you researched the Nebra Sky Disk?
No, what is that? That's a new one on me.
Don't know. Azur, if you'd like to...
the Nebraska Sky Disk.
Nebraska Sky Disk. All right, Chris Wilson.
I assume it's over the state of Nebraska. I used to live in Nebraska, so I'm curious to know what that is.
Okay. All right, Chris Wilson, back to you again, Sharon. It says, what are your thoughts on the crystal skulls?
I think the crystal skulls actually may have something to them. I mean, if you can store information on, let's say, a matrix of some kind, like a lattice work within a crystal, why wouldn't those skulls be a means of doing this? And the claim is, and I can't validate this claim, but if what I read is correct, that the claim is that if you get them all together, I think there were supposedly 13 of them, that they would somehow communicate with one another. Why isn't that possible? I put no limitations on what God's creation can do, and I believe that when the Watchers came down and conveyed secret knowledge to the humans at the time, that they were sharing things that they could do with the material world that God did not want humans doing. But that doesn't mean that the capability isn't still there. I think we're rediscovering old technology.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard this about the Watchers coming down and giving technology. Where do you think we would be as a species if that information was not transmitted to us? Would we be in grass huts?
No, I don't think so. Derek, you want to handle that one? You've been reading a lot about that stuff.
Well, archaeology. I mean, they were building houses out of stone thousands of years before Jesus was born. So no, I don't think that's true. It doesn't take an awful lot of technology to figure that out. But look at that! We got a picture of Sam right there. Yeah, that's great. I think that there are some things that we have been given by the spirit realm that we were probably not meant to know. Mike Heiser makes a really good case that it was to reverse the evil that the Watchers brought to humanity through the sin at Mount Hermon. That was at least part of Jesus' mission. That was a key part of Jesus' mission. Now, what that technology is, okay, it may be just as simple as practicing sorcery, necromancy, fortune telling, root cutting, potions, the art of making war, making weapons and things like that. I don't know that it needs to be any more complicated than that, but there were certainly things that God didn't intend for us to do to one another that these rebels, these supernatural rebels, encouraged in humanity.
Mm-hmm. So even today, people are speculating that somebody is downloading technology to our scientists, particularly to the military, probably governments too as well. Are these the same entities that transmitted the information years ago, eons ago?
The same precise entities? We can't really verify that. I think that they're the same class of entity. I think the fall continues to go on.
Mm-hmm. The spirit, the spirit realm, the entities therein were created with free will, just as we were, and obviously a lot of them have chosen to rebel.
How many fallen angels do you guys think there are, estimated?
No idea. No idea.
Are we millions?
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, there are differences in the Book of Enoch, and we understand that you've got to take the Book of Enoch with care.
Very great care. But there's a lot of stuff in there that helps you to get into the mindset of the people living at the time.
Right. The Book of Enoch says 200, but there's another place where it says, what, a couple million, doesn't it?
200,000.
200,000, okay. Mm-hmm. In the Bible, Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 says that God divided the nations and numbered them according to the number of the sons of God. That's the translation based on the Dead Sea Scrolls copy of the book of Deuteronomy. And it also tracks with the Septuagint translation. That's what the Jewish scholars understood the texts to read, the original Hebrew. So it means, when you look at Genesis chapter 10 and count the number of nations in the table of nations, means 70. But 70 is a number with a symbolic meaning. It essentially means every single one, every last one, not one left out. So those 70 essentially just represents the gods of all the nations. So it doesn't mean there were actually 70 fallen angels overseeing the rest of the world. It's the entire rest of the world was placed under the supervision of these spiritual beings who decided to rebel. And then, you read Psalm 82 and you see the courtroom scene where God passes judgment on them. Didn't work out for them too well. You will die like men and fall like any prince.
Rush Dizdar, he says that there are millions of people that he's always talking about the Black Awakening. And it seems to me that is some event where demon-possessed people are going to rise up and attack the humans. That it didn't seem to me like they're human. But he says that number is in the millions. And I'm wondering, or is it just demon possession, or is that are of demons that are here, or is it entities going to come down and take them over?
Well, you know what? We could sit and speculate about that for years. It's really hard to know exactly how it's going to happen. What we do know is that the book of Revelation shows that at the very least, something is going to open up and all of these critters are going to come out of there. And men are going to scream, wanting to die, but it's going to flee from them. So I think that it's possible that, I'm not a big zombie movie fan, but I suspect that something is going to happen on this earth that is very similar to some of those films.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the things that I put in the book there, Last Clash of the Titans, and thank you for showing the graphic there, the book cover, that if I really wanted to annoy scholars, I think the way the Battle of Armageddon shapes up, which is the war of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39, ends at Armageddon. Yeah, I could have titled the book The Ultimate Zombie Apocalypse, or made that the subtitle. But I think demons are definitely involved.
What can when obviously there's some kind of conflict. By the way, now I of course I have I don't know whether there is a delay to the video there to you, but I've got the Last Clash of the Titans. But what I want to ask you, Derek, is was there a first Clash of the Titans?
Well, that would have been the descent on Mount Hermon, because in the book I show why I believe the Watchers the angels who sinned, referenced in 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude verses 6 and 7, are the same as the Titans of the Greeks. There are connections there to the Amorites, the Canaanite neighbors of ancient Israel, and the veneration of the dead. The Rephaim, Nephilim, it's all a nexus, a milieu, if you will, that ties together, that Isaiah and Ezekiel and John, the prophets knew it. Jesus knew it, of course. It all fits together.
And your books make a really persuasive argument for that too, because you are not just, first of all, you're not just sitting and spinning. You're not saying this is what I think may have happened. You've read secular scholars, and these are very well researched, very well respected men and women, and you've taken what they have written and you've applied it. You've provided the missing piece to the puzzle. They're leaving out the Bible. They're simply looking at, this is what history shows us, and the archaeological record seems to indicate. You're actually saying, I'm going to take your connection and I'm going to now put it on the Bible. And whoa, hey, now it makes sense.
The pattern, yeah. The missing
pattern
pieces
fits, yeah.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you. These are the kind of conversations. These are the kind of conversations we have around our house. So it's, hey, I discovered something new. This new translation of an ancient hymn to the goddess Ishtar.
He was telling me about something new he discovered just before you called us this evening. So he's pretty excited. Nothing makes him happier than finding a new paper to read.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well let's just go ahead and get some people all riled up. Do you guys celebrate Christmas?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tree's already up. It's been up for weeks.
Oh, I am shocked. Now there's a movement. There's always a movement comes out every Christmas against it.
I know, and that's free will. People get to do what they want to do. But I personally want to celebrate and rejoice in the fact that this is the time of the year when you can speak the name of Christ to anybody on the street and they're not going to look at you funny. When you can actually say Merry Christmas, which refers to the birth of Christ, you can take that as a point, if nothing else, and say, you know what, the Lord loves you. Because this is when he chose to incarnate in the flesh of mankind. It is when we choose to celebrate. It doesn't mean it's when it happened, because you'll notice the Bible doesn't give us many clues as to exactly when it did happen. We know precisely when Easter happened, what we call Easter, the Resurrection Sunday. We know precisely when that happened. The day that he was born, the year that he was born, that may have happened in September of the year 3 BC, and that's according to the clues given in the book of Revelation that indicate a star pattern that Dr. Michael Heiser, he used software to go back and find that same pattern, and it occurred. The woman standing with her feet on the moon, with her clothed in the sun, with the stars crowning her head, and the devil trying to steal the child who was being born. That constellation alignment occurred in 3 BC on September 11th.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Should we look to the stars for signs?
Not as you would for astrology, no, not to predict the future, but yes, the Lord himself tells us that they're there for seasons and for signs. Mm-hmm. That we can look at those. And I loved Bullinger and the way he took the constellations and calls the gospel and the stars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Doug White has...
You're kicking things around, Derek.
Derek, what are you doing over there? Pay attention.
We can't see control.
Oh, it's Sam. Okay, I got it. Right. All right, question from Doug White out of one of the live chats for either of you. Is science and military trying to create X-Men?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you had the capability of editing DNA so that you could put super strength into your soldiers and also find ways to make them able to, go 24 hours without sleep, mm-hmm. wouldn't you do it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I personally think it's a terrible thing to do, but if I were a general and weren't a believer, I'd probably be doing it.
Sure.
Now, Derek, this question was brought up at the True Legends Transhumanism in the Hybrid Age. At what point does an alteration of DNA make a person not human? And is there any point where that DNA strand, if it's altered in any way, is it a check? Is it a stopper, a checkpoint when you get to heaven? Sort of a DNA test that your DNA is not human. You should not enter. Do you know? Is there have you contemplated that? Is there at any point?
Well, we thought about it and we speculated about it, but the real answer is I don't know.
I think the bottom line is that if you can make that free will choice, regardless of what's in your cell, if you can accept Christ, if you can make that choice to do that, then you're a candidate for salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now, if we talk about the CRISPR-9 technology out there, a lot of people say that, if they have cancer and there's a cure, if that alters their DNA, I mean, wouldn't that be a good thing?
Well, there are lots of things that are around you every day that are altering your DNA in one way or another. They're switching genes on, they're switching them off, they are causing mutations.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there was a study that came out, we were back in Indiana when this came out. I remember because I was still working in a cube farm, in an office, and it showed that fluorescent lighting has a mutagenic effect
and
on
it's
DNA.
Even worse if you're drinking coffee and
right.
fluorescent lighting.
So what is in every office building in America, everywhere? Fluorescent lights and free coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow. Well, my DNA is being changed right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think the danger with CRISPR and other gene editing techniques is that, because there are lots of them out there.
Well, Sharon, you're the biologist. Why don't you explain to folks what that technology is?
CRISPR is just a means that is a natural defense mechanism within bacteria that allows them to sort of heal their DNA when viruses invade. There are specific viruses that invade only bacteria, and these bacteriophages will leave traces of themselves within the genome of the bacterium, and these clustered, regularly spaced elements, which is how you get the word CRISPR. So I'm half asleep right now. Normally by now I'm falling asleep, so if I start to make no sense, just ignore me. But there's an enzyme that goes with it, which is where they get the Cas9 part of the CRISPR-Cas9 kit. It stands for CRISPR associated, so CAS. And it's just the enzyme number 9. There are a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. There are more than 9, actually. Number 2 is being used also pretty frequently. But it essentially uses that technique, a little kit within the bacterium, to edit out and remove these viruses.
Mm. Well, they were saying at the conference that you can buy a CRISPR-9 technology kit, like off of Amazon for $179. So man, I went out there.
Well, not Amazon. You can't get it off Amazon, but you can buy them.
Well, I don't know where it is. I was looking around. I searched the internet because I was wanting to get me that technology because I wanted to turn my DNA, so I turned into a super cowboy,
Well, there you go. Okay, there are these companies that you could go, and usually they contain about 10 runs, which just 10 passes, which means you get to run the experiment 10 times.
Yeah.
And they're usually very, very minor things like inserting a fluorescent gene, tracer gene, into an organism in order to make it glow. I mean, those are those $200 kits. It's not something you're going to be able to get seriously. It's not something that, say, a terrorist can spend $200 and suddenly, make the world go away because he's created the super germ. Mm-hmm. You need a little bit more than that and a better lab. But I think there is a danger that someone, because they are available if you can show that, yes, I have a right to buy this from you because I'm actually running a legitimate lab. You can fake those things. You can fake your documentation, and a group of bad actors, so to speak, and we're not talking about people who are in B movies, they could get hold of this information, these kits, and if they had the right pieces, they could put together a terrible new pathogen that could really wipe out, well, let's see, a fourth of mankind.
Mm-hmm. So would you buy the CRISPR-9 kit and then shoot Derek and then make him to where he cooks?
We have one of those kits at Skywatch TV, and they're always joking that I'm going to create something out of Josh and Derek together.
Oh, yeah?
The horror.
All right, we have this question for you, Derek. It says, was this from a Zooer out of the YouTube chat? We have 2 chats going on, actually. When Cain was banished for killing Abel, he was banished to be with the others. Do you know who the others were?
Banished to be with the others.
Well, he was banished. He was marked.
Yes.
He had to wander, and he said, well, they'll just kill me. So you have to ask you the question, who are they?
Yeah. Well, they would be his other siblings.
Possibly.
Presumably. Yeah.
Or it could be that they were actually, fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that could be too.
Angelic beings who were on the earth at the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing that says that Adam was kicked out on his own. It could be that others were sent out there, these other creatures, Elohim, within the unseen realm, that were sent out to help to guide him and teach him, and maybe even Cain lived a long life, and it's possible the Watchers came down in his lifetime.
When I think of the Watchers, I think of like a peep show, like they're watching everybody. That's really not what they're doing, is it? Do you think, and I know it's speculation, but do they look for a certain trait for humans to either interact with, destroy, alter, give information to? What are they looking for?
I don't think they're looking for a particular trait. I think they're looking for anybody that's willing to make a deal. And one of those ways that they can sort of lure you in is through pharmakia. I mean, if you take the right potion, you can suddenly see things that make you feel really powerful. The bottom line is that humans, we have this desire to be special. And so it doesn't take a fallen angel to prey upon that desire. There are cult leaders that do that every day.
Mm-hmm. You guys do a program called Sci Friday. What do you guys do on that show?
Nothing. Just sit around and talk. I don't know.
Just sit around and talk. Okay.
Laugh.
We
talk about science.
I'm laughing now.
we look at science news through a biblical lens. Sometimes we'll pick a specific topic and then just do a program based on that. We've done more of those recently because those tend to be a little more evergreen than the news-based ones, which can be dated very quickly.
And honestly, we've had a lot of people say that they really are enjoying those theme shows. And beginning in early October, we were running a series of theme shows that really explored the idea of the supernatural realm and why there is a scientific basis within it and how Christians need to react to it. And we may have one more of those because we allowed it to move over on into November because we missed a couple of October things because of various travel arrangements.
There is in this country, and really worldwide, we have chaos at the border. We have chaos. In fact, I think Paris is on fire now. There's a massive riot over there. They're burning things. I think.
Again?
Yeah.
They're always burning things in Paris.
It's the national pastime. I mean, in America here, it's baseball. In France, it's flipping cars and burning them.
Yeah.
I think they're complaining about petroleum prices. But hey, man, here in good old Indiana, man, we got gas down at $2.15 now. I mean, I don't know how low it can go. What are you guys paying down there?
About $2.19. The station up at the corner from us is a little higher, but it's because we're out in the middle of no place, and we like to give them the business anyway, just to keep the corner store open. Because when stuff hits the fan, I don't want to have to walk all the way to town to get the.
That's too far.
Yeah. No, it's about that here. It's about $2.19.
All right, so there's chaos in the border, there's chaos in the streets of America, really, and Antifa and other groups, and in Paris and that. It seems like worldwide there's a sort of an agitation, sort of a growing effect. Now, I don't want to get into the point where say, it looks bad because, this is in the time because, and wars and rumors of wars, not to mock that, but that's been said a long time. And every time there's a war, somebody said, there it is, time to, lock the house up and get the prep supplies out. But usually it's not. But I'm sensing more a continual evil spell of anger amongst the population. Have you guys talked about that? Do you know what the source of that is?
Derek's been doing some research on something called chaos magic.
Yeah, that was, in fact, that was something that Josh and I looked into for the previous book, Day the Earth Stands Still, which was kind of a surprise that our book about the UFO phenomenon actually led into Aleister Crowley, Helena Blavatsky, and chaos magic. And prophetically, there are some implications for that. Specifically, when you get into Genesis 1, verse 2, God, the Spirit of God is hovering over the face of the deep. But the word translated deep is Hebrew tehom, which was basically a Hebrew version of the Sumerian word Tiamat, which was their name for the chaos monster Leviathan. In the ancient Near East, all the religions, from Sumer to the Canaanites to the Greeks, the Egyptians, all had a myth or a story of a god, a warrior god, who had to create order out of chaos by defeating chaos. with the Greeks, it was Zeus and Typhon. The Egyptians, the serpent Apophis or Apep. It was Tiamat. The Canaanites, it was the storm god Baal. Had to defeat Yam, the chaos monster of the sea, whose sidekick was Lotan, which was their word for Leviathan. But in the Bible, it's over like, verse 2 of the Bible. Stay, bad dog, sit.
Doesn't even need a hammer.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. In the Bible, God you don't even see the battle. I mean, you see it referred to later in Isaiah, where he, crushes the heads of Leviathan and gives its carcasses food in the wilderness for in these other religions, the Mesopotamians, the Canaanites, the Greeks, the warrior god, whether it's Zeus, Baal, Marduk, or Ninurta, has all kinds of trouble. They have to get help from other gods, and they lose the first battle, have to go back for round 2. And no, in the Bible, Yahweh is like, bam, done. But that chaos monster, that chaos spirit, Leviathan, is not utterly destroyed. It was defeated, it was subdued, but not destroyed. That doesn't happen until Revelation 21, when God says there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and the sea was no more. Well, the sea in the Bible always represents the abyss, chaos, confusion, and that won't ultimately be destroyed and put away until the end. In the research for the book on the UFO phenomenon, Josh and I found that an outgrowth of the occult workings of Aleister Crowley through a couple of his devotees was something called chaos magic, where a fellow named Kenneth Grant, who was his personal assistant, detected what he said was a Set Sirius current in Crowley's magic. Well, Set was the Egyptian chaos, god of chaos, equated with Typhon, the Greek chaos god. And so he began developing this magical occult system to try to, and I know this sounds completely stupid, but to control chaos. I mean, how can you have a system to manage chaos?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like having a square circle. It doesn't work. It's cognitive dissonance. Anyway,
Guarding cats.
Yeah, or managing dachshunds. But that is that has become a very popular form of, thank you, Daniel, a form of magic. And in fact, one of the symbols of this, and occult researcher William Ramsey pointed this out in his book in his film about the smiley face killers, that the smiley face is a symbol often used by these chaos magicians. So anyway, yeah, they think that they're somehow going to appease or appeal to this chaos god Set, who they think is coming from somewhere in the vicinity of the star Sirius and returning to Earth. Occult researcher Peter Levenda, we cite his work in the book, and it is astonishing. And I don't pretend to have my head all the way around it because I'm not an expert on the occult, but I don't think it's a coincidence that when you look at the occult origins of the modern ancient aliens phenomenon, belief system, it's become a new religion. And then you look at the organized attempts to make contact, to communicate with these entities in outer space. One is called the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That's SETI, which means in Egyptian, man of Set, man of the chaos god. And the other, which is Dr. Stephen Greer's effort, which is CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is CSETI. And you can go to their website and download a free mobile app to learn how to communicate telepathically with this entity out there. It's we're using technology to get possessed. So anyway, chaos. It was prophesied in the Bible. It was the first enemy that God defeated in Genesis 1, verse 2, and it'll be right there until the end, Revelation 21, where there's a new heaven and a new earth. And finally, chaos, the sea, will be no more.
Speaking of the sea, did I not just read recently that scientists have found a gigantic sea? They said it's bigger maybe than the seas we have on topside. Have you guys heard that?
Yeah, a lot of water underneath the mantle.
Yeah, and are they saying that's where? Well, wait a minute now. The Bible doesn't the Bible say the waters come up from the deep?
The fountains of the deep. Yeah.
Yes.
So really, didn't science just prove that's correct?
Why, it might have. Imagine that.
It happens a lot. There was a study that just was published this past week by based on a presentation, but it was published in mainstream science publications. showing that there was an area northeast of the Dead Sea that was destroyed by like superheated strike from the sky, like and they date it using radiocarbon dating to about 3,700 years ago. Well, 1700 BC or thereabouts. That's about the time that Abraham was sojourning in the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, what could have happened in the vicinity of the Dead Sea to destroy a big area with superheated sulfuric blast from the sky? Oh,
wow.
Sodom and Gomorrah. But of course, they didn't say that. They're not going there.
No, it was aliens.
Oh, yeah. Now you
Pretty
guys.
sure it was aliens.
Speaking of trips, you guys are going on a
I'm
trip to
joking,
Israel
but
in May.
If you're listening and you don't know me very well, no,
That's right.
We
Yeah.
don't think it's aliens.
You guys are going on a trip in May, aren't you, to Israel?
We are. We're going back. We had the best time this year, and we decided we just have to do it again. So we're leaving around the 12th or so and getting back 24th.
Yeah,
right?
May 12th, and coming back on the 27th of May. The Israel portion of the tour runs through the 23rd. But then we'll go to Jordan for a few days, and we'll see Mount Nebo. We'll go to Petra again, and Wadi Rum, which is the Red Desert there in southwest Jordan, southeast of the Dead Sea. It's really an incredible thing.
And Derek's been working with Aaron Lipkin, it's his company that runs the tours, Avi Lipkin's son. And Aaron he's an avid amateur archaeologist, so he loves going to these very out-of-the-way places, and the two of them are working out some deals to go to places that no tourists ever see.
So are you guys going to visit Sodom? And is there a residual Sodom and Gomorrah there?
Well, not that scholars have agreed to. I've got a book, and it may be on the shelf here, probably in the other room. Anyway, a scholar who believes that area where they found the radiocarbon, where they radiocarbon dated the superheated blast northeast of the Dead Sea. It's in Jordan. But there are other scholars who think it was southeast of the Dead Sea. Others think it's southwest of the Dead Sea. So, I'm sure the remnants are there somewhere. Probably, if they got blasted from the sky, as the Bible tells us, not much there to find. But we won't see on the tour a spot where we will say this is probably where Sodom was.
Oh, look, scorch mark.
Yeah.
Oh, then there are pictures, of course, everything's on the internet, right? There's pictures of everything on the internet, but there's a picture of what looks like a pillar of salt. One could just maybe kind of make out sort of maybe a figure of a human, perhaps, I'm not sure. I kind of stay away from that. But let's get a little bit more controversial. You mentioned chaos and God said that he would never again destroy the earth with water, but it seems that he is indicating that he may destroy it by fire. And hence, ergo, we have these California fires. As you all know, L.A. Marzulli lost his house there. And there are others that haven't. And inextricably, in the middle of a fire zone, certain houses were untouched. Is that just climate change? Is it arson? Is it the end of the world? Is it judgment? Is it nothing?
Well, it's not climate change. Judgment is hard to... I'm not going to presume to say judgment because there are a lot of people of all faiths and all whose hearts are in condition in relationships with God that I have no way of knowing one way or the other. So there are people who like to point to California and what the state has done and say, well, clearly it's God's judgment on the state. Yeah, okay, but there are a lot of Christians in California as well. So, climate change.
And many of those Christians lost their homes.
Yeah, exactly right. So, climate change, no. They've had fires in California for a long, long time, even before the climate began changing.
Building a city in a desert is not a great idea.
Exactly, yeah. Paradise, California was built in an area that was essentially really dry, arid, and now suddenly you've got 27,000 people living in an area. And the state for decades has not undertaken the kind of forestry management that it really should. In fact, Governor Brown there is now proposing changes in rules that have been pushed by logging companies for a long time to try to manage the resources there better. I think a lot of it has to do, frankly, with the fact that you've already got a state that doesn't have enough water for the people who live there, and the population has multiplied by a factor of 4 over the last half century. So, you don't have enough water. You're not clearing out the dry brush. and you're building homes in areas that are prone to wildfires anyway, because of the winds coming in off the ocean, drying out the grasses, in the span of a day. I mean, you can have rain one day, and within 36 hours, it's ready to burn. So it's just poor use of the resources there, I think, more than anything else.
In a conspiratorial realm, though, there are those that are claiming they have video evidence of blue lasers being shot down. Have you guys looked into that? Is that all a hoax and just normal internet?
Normal internet conspiracy stuff. I don't see any evidence of it. I mean, if it was truly a laser, you probably wouldn't see the beam. I think the videos that I've seen of it look like lens flare to me.
Lens flare. That was my first thought on that. But in this day and age, guys, whatever story we're being told, I think we can assume it's the opposite. So when they say climate change as a fault, you got to think, what's the opposite of that? The political realm atmosphere out there, everything is politicized for one side or another, and it's never been as divisive as it is now. And people move the chess pieces around, and so no matter what they say, 9/11's one. It's just two planes and a guy, or Oklahoma City. It was one guy, but never mind, there's videos of three guys in a van and they found a leg.
Right.
It goes on and on. So whatever they tell us, and this is the thing that's happening out there about the control of media, particularly conservative media, right wing or alt-right or whatever somebody would call it. There's more and more of that. The scary technological future of information control is here now, and they've been putting this apparatus in place. Everybody's signed up for it. But unfortunately, they've used it against one side. And certainly, I imagine at some point they're going to have an algorithm there that anytime somebody speaks the gospel on a YouTube video, YouTube's going to delete it out, say it violates community standards. Have you guys faced any deletions, warnings, anything like that?
Like my YouTube videos for my channel have been pretty much demonetizing. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold here. Tom Horn brought some stuff back from California with him, so wow. And I just picked it right up. But we didn't depend on the YouTube channel for monetization anyway, so it didn't bother me much. I know that there were a lot of Christians who were using it and really needed the income, and it really hurt when YouTube and Google, which is the parent company, began cracking down on that. But I thought it was funny that one of the videos they chose to demonetize was the interview I did with Dr. Timothy Furnish, his book on the political history of Middle Earth.
Middle Earth and the hobbits?
Those hobbits are just too close-minded.
Wow. The one ring to rule them all, man. I don't
exactly.
know. Why would that be? It is interesting what they choose to delete. We're heading to a future, as you guys know. I know you guys are always up on science. China is taking total control of their population with social media scoring, and I think by the year 2025, maybe I wouldn't think it's that long, they're going to have every single person there tagged and monitored and controlled. But it's only a matter of time. It seems like we're getting just on the very end of that, it's beginning in this country, and it comes with that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook control they're putting out. Eventually, people will alter what they say in order to not get banned, and it's already a source of control. Once China gets control of their population, it seems that they're already moving into Africa and beginning to set up the seizing of resources there and implementing of that. Do you see China as a global threat, or is Russia or Islam a bigger threat?
Yes, and yes. We really are blessed to be able to call Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis a friend, and his most recent book, Alliance of Evil, deals with the growing partnership between Russia and China. And I think Vladimir Putin, love him or hate him, you can't deny the fact that he's a really shrewd player. He knows how to play the game.
He's essentially a king.
Yeah, wow. And he recognizes that China is the counterweight that he needs to offset the opposition from the West. You've got these old Cold Warriors here in the United States who still see Russia as the biggest threat. And, to be honest, they've got, more nukes than anybody. Mm-hmm. But China, as a growing economic power, is the one to really watch. And if China and Russia partner and we don't find a way to divide the two, I think we're going to be in trouble. Now, having said that, China is officially an atheist country. They are really putting the screws to our brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ there, and we need to pray for the church in China. Russia is at least a nominally Christian nation. And isn't it odd that when you look at the activities of the deep state elites here in the West, that Russia, you can make a case that Russia is emerging as the defender of Christendom.
Well, that's how Putin positions himself.
Yeah. The book I'm working on right now is dealing with Islam and the spiritual forces behind Islam. And when you look at the 14 centuries of history that Islam has behind it, I would argue that on a spiritual basis, I think they pose as big a threat to the world as anything else out there. The reason these impoverished Arabs were able to come out of the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century and very quickly overwhelm the two most powerful empires on earth, the Persian and the remnant of the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, was because their guys, their fighters, didn't care if they died. Right. Because if they died, they got all these supernatural goodies. And interesting, by the way, when you look at Islam and all of the rewards that their faithful are promised are carnal rewards. Mm-hmm. You get to spend all of eternity drinking all the wine you want, eating all the food you want, and having lots and lots of intimate relations with supernatural women who were designed by Allah specifically to please you. I mean, that is so the opposite of our promised rewards. Mm-hmm. Anyway, setting that aside. But if they didn't die in battle, and this was the thing, this is the secret that Muhammad apparently figured out after 10 years of preaching and getting 100 followers. He suddenly said, hey, if we start raiding caravans and keeping all their stuff, if you come with me, Allah says you get to keep all that stuff too. Suddenly, boom, he took over all of Arabia. And then they went forward and they conquered the entire world around the Mediterranean Sea because guys who didn't care if Allah existed or not found a very convenient way to get rich really quick and all the women that they could possibly have. So, for them, it was like a no-lose situation. If we win the battle, I win. If I die in battle, I win. How do you fight that? How do you fight that when somebody doesn't care? I mean, the threat of death holds no fear for them. Mm-hmm. Well, the irony, of course, is that we as Christians shouldn't have any fear either. How do you threaten a Christian with that? Oh, you're going to send me home to be with the Lord? Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. Sadly, we don't often respond that way, and I can't say with complete certainty that if someone put a gun to my head that I would respond that way either. Mm-hmm. I hope that I would.
Derek, is that book you're talking about? Is that upcoming book called Bad Mood Rising?
Yes, that's the working title of the book. That should be out sometime in 2019.
There are two Islamic women that are in Congress now, and they are one of them is going to get changed. The banning of head coverings in the House chambers has been I think it's 121, 180 year rule. They're going to change that. They said they plan on changing a whole bunch of other rules. But a blogger, I believe by the name of Laura Bloomer, pointed out in one of her blogs that this woman from Minnesota was arguing for FMG, which I believe stands for female genital mutilization, and she was consequently banned instantly, really, from Twitter and probably from Facebook too. I don't know. So there already is an attempt to backdoor Sharia law in this country. They claim that in Europe there's no-go zones, but there is. France, I know we have a listener from France that always watches the show. But I've heard there's 50 to 60, maybe 100 no-go zones. Is the gospel going to be able to overcome the thrust of Islam in this country, or is it going to be vice versa?
Well, ultimately, yes, it will. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think one thing we need to remember as Christians is that Muslims need Jesus just as much as we
Amen.
do. We don't have a monopoly on the truth. We're just the beggars who know where to get the free mail. And we need to remember to keep pointing it to. It's hard to do when people respond with anger to the gospel. But remember, they nailed Jesus to the cross. I mean, why should we expect any better treatment? We just need to remember that they are dupes of the principalities and powers and cosmic rulers of this present darkness. They are being used. Some of them know it, but many of them don't. Many of them think that they are serving the forces of good, the forces of light, and don't recognize that they are in fact being manipulated, which is tragic. But we need to be careful. And again, I realize as I say this that this is a lot easier said than done. But we need to be careful that we don't make ourselves stumbling blocks between them and salvation.
You know, there's such an irony that a woman who has gone to Congress, she has been elected to a position of some authority and a lawmaker, would want to move us to Sharia law, a law that will actually remove her from that position.
Yeah.
And put her under enslavement.
And shut down her right to free speech. Yeah. It's this is something I talked about on
It's a
Skywatch.
spiritual disconnect.
Oh, it truly is. It truly is. And that's why I say that they are duped. This is something I talked about on Skywatch TV this past week, because the two women, Talib from Detroit and Omar from Minnesota, both came out during the campaign as they were, trying to stump for votes, opposing the so-called BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, which targets businesses that do business in Israel. Basically, it's waging economic warfare against Israel. Well, look, we all have a right to choose to buy wherever, whatever, for whatever reason. I mean, for a lot of years, we were discouraged from buying foreign automobiles because we wanted to protect American auto workers. You remember the television campaigns for the, was it Women's Garment Union? Look for the union label.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I get that. That's fine. But if you're going to say one thing and say, okay, well, this is not productive toward a two-state solution, and then as soon as you get elected, then turn around and say, okay, I totally support the BDS movement. Well, that's what we in the West call lying. Mm-hmm. Sadly, under Islamic law, it is called taqiyya, which means if you are in a position of weakness, you can say or do whatever you need to in order to protect Islam until you are in a position to go ahead and do what you need to do in order to advance the cause of Islam. So in other words, they've sacralized, which means made sacred, the practice of lying to non-believers. Now, I mean, there are a lot of Christian and Jewish politicians who practice something that looks a lot like taqiyya as well, but at least we don't try to say, well, yeah, Jesus said it's okay. No, we know that that's wrong. But anyway, that is something that we need to be very careful about. And we just need to be wise enough to recognize that this is a practice that some will use to advance their particular religion to the detriment, I believe, of our society as a whole. And we also need to recognize as Christians that when we say so publicly, like Laura Loomer, you're probably going to be deplatformed for it. You're going to be called a racist, even though it's a religion. It's not a race. There's nothing genetic about it. You're going to be called an Islamophobe. You're going to be called a xenophobe and a misogynist and all sorts of other things. But again, they put the guy that we follow on a cross and killed him. So we shouldn't be surprised.
I think those conflicts are going to accelerate here very soon. But hey, we got a question here for you, Sharon. Sharon's from Azure out of the YouTube. What, in your opinion, where is the location of hell?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think you can infer from the various clues within prophecy and in extra biblical texts that it's within a lower level. In other words, it's below, it may actually be inside the earth, but the abyss itself is described in ways that make it sound like it's underneath the earth and it's a place of fresh water. Isn't that what you say, Derek? And if the abyss is, let's say it's a portion of what we call hell. It's one of those misnomers. I think we in the West, we tend to think of it as a particular place, but there is Hades, there's Tartarus, which is a much lower, level of hell, if you want to put it that way. There are places of punishment. I tend to, when I read the Redwing Saga, I tend to think of it as this is the abode of the Elohim who have chosen to rebel. The Elohim that are loyal to God live elsewhere. But these creatures have to live there. And it's a place where they meet. They have an infernal council there, which is the opposite of the divine council. There are levels that are levels of punishment, where they're in prison and they were put there by Yahweh, by God Almighty. But there are also levels where they have access to Him. So I don't know, are there portals that they're able to get through what we would deem the Earth's crust? We want as human beings to make it a very easy sort of design that we can put together in a 3D model and say, this is exactly, if I poke my finger through the mantle here and let it go in deeply enough in my little model of the Earth, then I would tickle, Hades. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. It could be that it's much more complicated than that.
There is a report out that witches now outnumber Presbyterians. I believe a gathering of witches have and probably are continuing to try to cast spells on the president, Donald Trump. Is in the spiritual realm, there obviously are forces arrayed against each other. Is a sort of a victory of that? I know that this lawyer guy named Avenatti, who's the porn lawyer for Stormy Daniels, his life just blew up. I mean, he got thrown in jail. He got women making accusations against him. There have been a number of other high-profile personalities that have come against Trump that something has happened to them. Is that a result of Christians praying for the president and battling back against these witches and sort of like using a mirror and bouncing those spells and the chaos back at them? Are these eruptions?
That's entirely possible. I mean, that's entirely possible. I mean, we're told to pray for our leaders in power, regardless of who they are or, what political party they're from, so that we'll live peaceful lives. But yeah, it is interesting. It may just be that this particular gentleman is too ambitious for his own good and just, stepped in it. Mm-hmm. It could be that he has overstepped what the infernal council wanted mm-hmm. of him. One of the things I really appreciate about Sharon's fiction and the Redwing Saga is that it's pretty clear that the rebel angels who are conspiring against humanity and conspiring against the Creator aren't all on the same side. The spirit realm, the supernatural realm, is a lot more complicated than we think it is. In fact, I'm going to touch on this in the forthcoming book, Bad Moon Rising, mm-hmm. because if you look carefully in the Old Testament, you see that there's a period there from the Exodus, and maybe even as far back as Abraham, until about the time where Joshua had his long day, with the Valley of Ajalon, where the sun stood still and kept the moon out of the sky for a full day. Some of this is concealed because of the way the Hebrew's been translated into English, but the main enemy, the main supernatural enemy of Israel up until about that point was the moon god. The moon god, who was far more important in the ancient world than we realize. And it's after that point that then the storm god, Baal or Baal, comes forward, and his followers become the main thorn in the side of the Israelites until about the time of the revived Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar takes the captives and destroys the temple. And I'm going to show something really, really, I think, jaw-dropping about the final night of Babylon. That it was really a smackdown against the chief god, the god worshipped by the last king of Babylon. And it wasn't Marduk, who was the city god of Babylon, who became the king of the Mesopotamian pantheon. It was the moon god. And I don't think it's a coincidence that even today, the Kaaba in Mecca is in the shadow of a symbol of the crescent moon.
Exactly.
So, but I think that you've got what that evidence. I think what that suggests in the Old Testament is that this shift from fighting against followers of the moon god to fighting against followers of the storm god is that there's competition going on in the infernal realm between these rebel angels over who they think will be the one to knock Yahweh mm-hmm. off his Mount of Assembly.
And the only time they actually agree with one another is when they're making deals, just like politicians.
Right, yeah. Like Nancy Pelosi. Hey, look, you can keep this committee chair if you'll vote for me for speaker. Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting thing. I was discussing Sir Charles Warren earlier, the one who discovered the stone on Mount Hermon, and he also sketched out this sort of, almost in the shape of the Golden Mean, this wall that forces you to travel in a certain direction and circumambulate this sort of divot out area. It's scooped out so that you have to do a water offering, a libation.
Right.
He theorized that formation was perhaps the pattern for the circumambulation that takes place around the Kaaba. And he claimed in his report to the Palestine Exploration Fund that, and they're the ones who sponsored him, that there were 5 stones from 5 sacred mountains that were at the Kaaba.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which takes us back to this idea of stones having power.
Yeah, and the mountains are all really fascinating. One, of course, is Mount Ararat, where Noah landed the ark. One was Mount Carmel, where Elijah had a showdown with the prophets of Baal. One is the mountain in Mecca, Jabal al-Nur, where something calling itself Gabriel visited Muhammad. One was the Mount of Olives, and the 5th one was Mount Hermon.
So these 5 stones, if he was correct, and he did speak with many of the locals and hear their legends, if these 5 stones were carried from these sacred mountains to the Kaaba, wasn't because they were trying to carry the land that belonged to a certain entity.
Oh, yeah.
So move the corporate, council to the Kaaba.
Got to think about that.
Well, that's there's so many things that's going to be happening in our upcoming days here. We're talking about chaos, Derek, and I mentioned Avenatti, but I could have mentioned what happened to Megyn Kelly's career. The skier, some woman skier broke her leg. I mean, there's a number of them. But when it gets to Hillary Clinton, there seems to be some kind of black magic there. Some people say she is cloned or has been cloned. Now, you mentioned, and I've never heard this before, really, that there are the wars in the heavens of who's going to take us over. Who's going to do what with us. But it seems to me that her deal fell through because it seemed the deal was set for her to be the president. But something changed that.
I think Christians prayed, and it changed.
Yeah.
So do you guys believe the Mark Taylor prophecies?
Well, I'll be honest. I read only, skimmed the book. It's difficult to find time to read a lot of other books that
We're
don't
so
relate.
busy writing, we don't have time to read.
That don't relate specifically to the research that you're doing. But it is documented that he went on record as saying that he believed Donald Trump would be president, that he'd heard that.
And get a second term.
Yeah, and then would get a second term. So, we'll find out if that information was correct. But this was in 2011 is when he first got the message before the 2012 election. So,
well, we can tell you this. We've met Mark a number of times, and he is very personable. He's a genuine person. He is not somebody who's seeking the limelight. I truly do believe that he was shown a vision.
Yeah.
He also went against the popular theories that everything's going to crash and it's going to be the worst economic failure ever. He was actually saying it's going to be the opposite. Now, as one looks across the land, it seems like it's more positive than negative.
Yeah, things have done well. Now, the stock market had a rough week this past week where all of the gains in 2018 basically evaporated in a week, and cryptocurrencies have been crashing. But, we'll see where it goes from here. Things so far under the president have done well, and I think his approach toward trade and trying to level the playing field that we've been, that we've been on, especially regarding China, is having some benefit. And the way he's renegotiated NAFTA as well with Canada and with Mexico, because there were other countries around the world that were taking advantage of NAFTA in order to ship things into Canada and Mexico that could then be brought into the United States with much lower tariffs than they would have had if they'd come straight into the country. So, I think the president is doing some good things there, and we will see if the blessings continue. One of the things I keep pointing out, though, on Skywatch TV is that when you look at the stock market or look at the daily trading numbers for Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, don't get wrapped up in that, because a lot of what goes on as far as trading on the markets has no bearing whatsoever, no relationship to reality at all. It's speculation, pure and simple.
And a lot of it's done by computers.
And a lot of it's done by algorithms. So just make sure your own financial situation is sound. Get out of debt. Get out of debt and start putting aside some stuff, for long-term food or what have you. Make sure you've got a good, secure supply of water, backup power, whatever. Just not so that you can basically hunker down in a bunker and tell the rest of the world to go, pound sand if things get bad, but so that if you've got extra when things get bad, you can say, hey, look, you're in need. I've got extra. Let me share this with you. And oh, by the way, do you know Jesus Christ?
Exactly, which is all the more reason to have printed books. I love, having digital versions of everything so I can carry an entire library with me. But we may lose access to that one day. I think one of the biggest things that's going to happen in the next 5 years is that the internet will probably totally change or crash.
You guys live in Missouri. Have you guys ever visited the Christian compound near Steelville?
No.
We have not. Met the folks that are behind it, though.
Okay. So you've talked to people that are behind it, or you know them?
Yes. We talked to them. Don't know them, but they were at one of the conferences we spoke at last year.
How do they say that's going down there?
It's been a while since we talked, about a year and a half probably. So, but it looked like things were, well organized. But again, that's, just from a few conversations and looking at the brochure, I can't, speak to it.
All right. So what's you guys are involved in so many things. It's hard to keep up with you guys, man. I mean, we can just change the channel. You guys are like on every channel, right?
We're slowly taking over the world.
Oh man, the Gilberts you've heard it, folks. They say they're taking over. Now we know. What is the very next project that you guys are both working on? I know, Derek, you got your Bad Moon Rising, and Sharon, you've got the Nicks in the series. What are you guys working on together?
Israel we're doing together, but we're working on a book together for probably very late next year, and the working title is Profiling the Dead.
Yeah,
and we're taking a look at all of these entities that we've been studying, that I've been studying for the Redwing Saga, that Derek's been reading about for his books, and we're actually going to analyze them.
Really?
There's a lot more in the Bible about the dead, the veneration of the dead, the domain of the dead, than I realized. And again, the English translation covers some of it because the Hebrew word, for example, Rephaim, is often translated as shades or spirits instead of Rephaim. I was surprised to find out a couple of years ago that the neighbors around ancient Israel, the Canaanites, the Amorites, knew who the Rephaim were. And when you start digging into it, and I think it's maybe not so much a translation thing from Hebrew or the Semitic languages into English, as it is the fact that it's secular researchers doing the translating, because there are words in Akkadian and other Semitic languages that are translated as chief or sheikh or great one that are based on the same root as Rephaim in the Bible. And in fact, the greatest of the Amorite kings in all of history, Hammurabi, the lawgiver of Babylon, the one who really made Babylon great again. He made the Sumerians pay for that wall.
That's funny.
His name is a compound word, as many names in the ancient world were. In the time of the patriarchs, you would have a personal name and then a god name or theophoric element. And the theophoric element, Hammurabi's name, the R-A-B-I, could also be R-A-P-I, Rape, which is based on the root Rephaim. His name essentially means my fathers, my ancestors are the great ones, the Rephaim. And there were like 5 other Amorite kings with that same name over a period of hundreds and hundreds of years. So they were really important, a lot more important than we know just from the 1 or 2 mentions in the Bible of the Rephaim tribes along the Jordan River that had to be wiped out by the Israelites. They were being worshipped and venerated as late as the time of the Judges by their neighbors. And in the Bible, we're told that it was eating sacrifices offered to the dead that got the Israelites in trouble before they crossed the river to attack Jericho. A plague broke out. 20,000 or more Israelites died in this plague until Phinehas took a spear and ran through an Israelite man and a Midianite woman. Why? Not because they were doing the dirty there in front of the tent of meeting, which they may have been. If you read between the lines of the text there in Book of Numbers, but in Psalm 106 verse 28, it was because they were eating sacrifices offered to the dead. And there are other places in Isaiah where it's clear that this was a thing that was a snare to the Israelites for a long, long time. And, it continues down to the present day. I would argue that our modern culture of death and this idea that somehow early termination is an acceptable treatment for pain and suffering has something to do with that. But yeah, I mean, religions to this day in many parts of the world are still based on veneration of the ancestors. It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years.
Well, Derek, so somebody asked this question too. He says, could the Day of the Dead be related to this ancient practice of worshiping the Rephaim?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
Santa Muerte.
In fact, that day, is the Day of the Dead in the fall or in the spring? Is it on the Akita Festival?
I would have to look.
There are 2 times during the year when supposedly the veil thins, and it goes back to these ancient practices of the Akita Festival in the spring and in the fall. And those are the times when the dead would come back.
No, it's Halloween, Day of the Dead.
Well, there's another day they come back though too.
Yeah, there's another one, Santa Muerte.
Election Day.
Yeah, in Chicago mostly.
Come on, let's face it, man. In Chicago, half the graveyards there vote. Get up and vote.
There's this wonderful Facebook poster that I shared because somebody else had seen it, and I bet you saw it too, Daniel. It said, this Thanksgiving, be sure to count your blessings, and if you live in Florida, recount them.
Well, that's the way it has to be. And I'm wondering, here in Indiana, our election went just fine and didn't have a recount or anything. And what's the problem with Florida? It gets back to that chaos thing. It seems that they have a chaotic election just so they can end up finding boxes of votes when necessary. Yeah. There
were a couple boxes of provisional votes that were found inside an Avis rental car turned in at the Fort Lauderdale airport. Somebody left the boxes in the back of the rental car.
Yeah, I've also heard they found some labeled 2020. So, hey, are you?
And just in case, that was on there too.
Are you guys going to be at the 2019 True Legends or no?
Yes.
Are you guys speakers or what's going on there?
I haven't seen the speakers list yet, but Derek's been asked to be the master of ceremonies. So,
well, I can't think of a better person to do it.
Oh yeah, well, it's an honor to be asked, and it's a wonderful gathering. I can't think of a better venue. I mean, all of the conferences we speak at have things to recommend them. And this past year, we were blessed to speak at some small ones, some big ones, but I'll tell you what, that gathering is really, really unique. And that particular location, that venue, and the fact that it's close enough that we can drive there was just a really kind of seal.
That's one of my favorite parts of it.
Yeah, but we love Steve Quayle, love his family. His wife Loretta is just a real sweetheart.
We practically adopted Tyler. We'll keep him.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thought it was groundbreaking in that the secular people that they brought.
Yeah.
That to me was groundbreaking. And you know what? When I heard, I don't know if you caught this. It was very subtle pickup that I picked up anyway. But a couple times the age of the earth was mentioned in the millions of years. And, there's a whole lot of Christians that believe that it's 6,000. I'm not going to debate the years. And some people say, 6 million, 6,000. God can do anything he wants to. But when the secular folks mentioned those millions, there was not a ooh and an ah or a oh or you're going to burn or anything. They just, okay, and it was very respectful. And I thought that was just amazing.
So did we. We got to speak with these speakers at backstage, and many of them said the same thing, that they were very impressed with the way the Christians responded to them.
Yeah, Richard Dolan was a really interesting fellow to talk to, and had the opportunity to meet Chase Kletsky and her husband, and they were really fascinating. But meeting Dr. Hugo de Garis in person.
Oh my goodness, he's so much fun. When you first meet him, he's so reserved, but he is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I can see that, man. He's definitely somebody you want to sit around a table and have some laughs with. And you wouldn't think that with his brain. I don't know how many brains are in there, but there's a whole lot. But
more than I can count.
You remember Richard Dolan said being there at that conference was healing almost from the conferences that he has attended elsewhere. Now, to me, that's real progress.
And it's an opportunity for us to share the gospel. You have to lead with love. If you start out by saying, you're wrong and let me tell you why, you're really not going to win anybody. But if you start out with, hey, you know what? I'm really interested in what you have to say there. Let's talk.
Well, to you particularly, Sharon, there was a moment there where the question was asked whether or not we were at war or would be at war, and you said yes. And Richard Dillon says, I don't believe in war, but recently, because Susan and I, we kind of follow his work. He is talking about that we are in a war. So I don't know whether he changed his mind and he came to the realization or what, but I thought, wow, that's interesting.
That is interesting. Well, praise God.
Mhm.
That means he was listening intently. I mean, the whole Branson thing was just impeccably well done, and I can't wait to see you guys there the next time. Well, I'll tell you what, we're near the end of the broadcast. Derek and Sharon, any last thoughts you'd like to say? Go ahead.
Well, we just pray for everyone to seek God's will and just pray for wisdom and discernment in the year ahead. One of the things that really struck me over the last couple of weeks, I've been reading more about the history of Islam and Islam's wars with the West, is how often forces that should have defeated the armies of Islam were overwhelmed because of internal divisions and strife. And I think that should be instructive to us as Christians, because very often, and the old joke is that the Christian firing squad is a group of us standing in a circle aiming at a guy standing in the middle. And the point being that we're inflicting wounds on ourselves when our enemy is outside. And by enemy, I'm not meaning the human opponents, because again, that's what Paul wrote. We're not wrestling against human opponents, but against principalities, powers, cosmic rulers over this present darkness. Literal intelligent evils, or evil intelligences who are far older and far more intelligent than we are, and yet we are dividing over points that are not critical to core doctrine. And so I think we need to be a little more forgiving with one another and turn our efforts outward, because the enemy is outside the camp, not, and generally speaking, not inside the walls. Now, having said that, I recognize that there are practices that are coming from the New Age movement that are getting into our churches and all that. Okay, that's fine, but let's not focus our energies on one another and dividing with one another. Let's do it with love. Share these differences we have in love, not divide over these secondary doctrines, and just make sure we're fulfilling our core mission, which is to make disciples of all nations.
So if somebody says they believe in flat Earth, we say okay.
Yeah.
So we love you, brother.
You got
God
free
bless
will. Believe in what you choose.
Exactly.
You believe in Christ as your Savior? Are you covered by the blood?
Yeah, and look, and coming back to the question you asked in the first hour, if you don't believe in celebrating Christmas, look, we understand that the commercialization, the secular celebration of Christmas in our culture has nothing to do with Jesus Christ and Him crucified. We get that. We understand that. We also understand that when you look at the actual history behind the original celebration and how the early church chose the date, it had nothing to do with pagan religion. They were sincerely trying to honor the fact that God Himself would choose to incarnate as one of us in the lowest possible form, in a barn. Mm-hmm. Hey, Clem, go look what's happening out there in the barn. That's how He chose to manifest amongst us. But like I said, if you choose not to celebrate, we get that. That's fine. That's fine. Let's not beat one another up over that particular issue. Let's talk with our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors about whether or not they know that they are sinners in need of salvation, and that the God who created, spoke everything into existence, died for them because He loves them that much. Let's focus on that and get that message out there.
Well said. Sharon, any final thoughts?
The one final thought I would say is that we as believers tend to, especially those who study prophecy, I know that when I look at prophecy, my brain goes down the pike and I start seeing what's coming 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 100 years from now. But all we really have promised is today. Over the last couple of years, we've lost a number of friends who are in this ministry. And Chris Putnam is one, Chuck Missler is another. We just lost our marquee. And losing those warriors is a reminder that we only have today, and there is no promise that we will have tomorrow to fight for him. So redeem the time.
Yeah.
Do the best you can with each moment of every day. Serve him to your utmost with every breath you take, with every word you speak, with every step you take, and honor him. Lift Christ up. Declare him. Sacrifice he made, the fact that he rose again and that he is coming back. That needs to be preached to everyone we meet. And anytime the Lord gives you an opportunity to make that statement to someone, do so.
Well,
Amen.
Those two statements right there from you guys is why so many people love you. We love you here as well, and appreciate you coming on the program. Can we have you on again sometime, guys?
Anytime, Daniel, we love you, and we will just, anytime you call us, we're here.
Amen.
Okay. All right, guys, stay safe. Thanks for being on the
You
show.
too.
God bless you.
Love you, brother.